Townsville's aiming to become the first mentally healthy city in Australia. And today they're putting on an event, so I'm going to have a look around and tell you what I think of it. Now, years ago, when I was a lad, if you'd put on a mental health event, no bugger would turn up. But these days, it's quite different. But generally, people are more comfortable about talking about issues around mental health. Just coming to the event, so you just saw the sign up there for the event. Very kind of interesting that there's a disclaimer there saying that, you know, there may be some distressing stuff happening here, and if it triggers off something for you, then you can contact a mental health organisation for support. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? You often get this in relation to mental health, you know, this notion that this might trigger off an episode for you. But it's kind of an interesting thing. If this event, as it seems to be, is kind of geared around promoting well-being, why would you have a disclaimer saying it could do exactly the opposite? You know, it'd be like going to a restaurant with a sign up in the window saying risk of food poisoning. It wouldn't be the most attractive restaurant to visit, perhaps. You wonder why they have these disclaimers. They're kind of ubiquitous, but it might be this is a public event. It's actually being co-funded by Townsville City Council, so maybe it's a litigation issue. You know, the lawyers need this disclaimer saying if you're disturbed by this event and are harmed by this event psychologically, we warned you, so we're not culpable. So maybe it's that. Who knows? Anyway, let's head into the event and see what's going on. You may have noticed I've got a lot of luggage on me because I've got all my camera gear over prepared. This is the first time I've taken out the big camera out to an event, and I'm awfully self-conscious. In case you hadn't realised I'm English, some of us guys are painfully self-conscious. And also, another trait of the Englishman of my age is I over-prepare. It comes from the colonial days when we went and tried to conquer the world at the spirit of being on an expedition. I have over-prepared. I'm going to set up my camera, stick my microphone on, and see if we can get some decent footage. But it will make me stand out, and I'm not comfortable with that. Not good for my well-being. You know, when I said I'm over-prepared, scratch that. Poorly prepared. I couldn't attach my big mic on my big camera, so I'm stuck with my little action cam. We just got a talk over here, so I'm just going to sit in and see how mental health is being discussed. What's kind of interesting is the phrase mental health illness. I don't know how that's crept in. It's quite extraordinary. Mental health illness. It's a bit of a contradiction, really, isn't there, in that? But there's a decent number of people there, which is surprising for me, in the audience. So we've got about 30 people all listening in. And, I mean, the appearance of the day is much like a fete. You know, you've got your food trucks, you've got your stalls selling clothes and bric-a-brac and so on. And then you've got a few organisations have their stalls. So it's kind of got a feeling of a fete. But yeah, people are actually listening to the talk on mental health. I'll go and listen to a bit more of it before I make a judgment. So there are 3 people. There was a panel discussion. I only caught the end of it, so I don't know the whole of it. But they had a summing up. Key messages. 3 panel members. One member is one of the organisers. I've met him. He's a decent guy. So he was on the panel. There was a health practitioner on the panel. I don't know what type of health practitioner. and there was also someone who self-identified as having a diagnosis of mental illness. So there were the 3 panel members, and the summing up, so the project manager for Townsville Mentally Healthy City said the key message was take responsibility for your own mental health. The health practitioner summing up said she kind of agreed with that. She said prioritize your own mental health, prioritize you, look after yourself. The 3rd panel member, the person who self-disclosed that she was diagnosed as having a mental illness, said don't let the diagnosis define you. That was probably the most sensible thing that I've heard. So the first panelist and the second panelist saying take responsibility for your own mental health. Well, you kind of get it, but the issue around mental health, it's a social thing. You know, it's dependent upon the other people around you. So you've got to look after other people as well. And it's also not clear that it is wholly our responsibility. Our mental health is not wholly our responsibility, because we know that the major factors that impact mental health are things that are kind of outside of our control. Things like poverty and inequality. You know, those are the major factors. So to take responsibility for those things would be a curious thing to say. Okay, so this is not doing my well-being any good. I'm getting all riled up already. But you know, it's the dominant message people are getting. It's not just here, it's at similar events like this, that, you know, look after yourself, take responsibility for your own well-being. And it's very individualistic. You know, we're actually got to look after each other. That's the key thing. There's a compassionate cafe over there. So I shall have a look at that. Okay, so that's a slightly different focus. That issues around life and death and grieving and so on. Okay, a little wander around other areas. Okay, that was unexpected. Sri Burley, the guy whose story was the basis for the film Lion. You know, the guy who, as a boy, found himself lost after getting on a train with his brothers.
And this train station was the biggest gargantuan train station that I've ever seen in my life. It was so huge, and I felt so alienated. And I'm thinking, you know, where am I? Where's my brother? Where's my sister? Where's my mum? And I started as a sort of a young kid would, you know, sort of cry for salvation and help.
Very famous film, famous story. Again, this is unfair because I didn't sit through the whole talk. But what initially would have had promise for getting to some of the core issues, which would be about poverty, living in India, Calcutta, and disadvantaged community, living in poverty. You know, the socio-economic factors behind mental health. And there's great promise maybe for the talk that maybe the focus could angle towards that. But the talk was a different type of talk. It's very much talk about resilience, about how he picked himself up. Very individualizing again, very individualistic. I don't want to be too negative, but it's just the dominant way that we talk. And psychology has a lot to answer for in relation to this, because it just encourages us to think about mental health in these ways. And for as long as we think about mental health in these ways, we stand no chance of being able to really address the problem. You know, we're always going to get casualties for as long as the thing that causes poor mental health isn't addressed. And as much as we focus on individuals, fortifying the individuals, why the hell aren't we focused on the actual causes here? There's some nice stuff going on there. There's a puppet show for the kids and things, so it's kind of, yeah, there's some fun things, and we've got an active area where people are promoting active lifestyles, so paddling boards and martial arts and football and all these sorts of things. Yachting, I can see. What are we doing in terms of teaching people to take responsibility for their mental health? How each of us can deal with it in our own ways, and we just need tips from either experts or people who've had the lived experience of how to get through the bad times. You know, why isn't there focus on why are there bad times? What's causing the bad times? So it's just moved into the NGO section, Beyond Blue, Headspace and so on, mental health services, but other organisations. There's a comedy workshop. So there's a nice mix. It's the talks that are the problem, I think. Okay, it's time to head home.
Any ideas?
So the mistake I made was to go to the talks, because I'm always going to get annoyed at the talks, aren't I? Because I'm an academic. I spend my life going to talks, listening to talks, giving talks, criticising talks. But there is a thing that's quite dominant at this event, but not just this event, it's these sorts of events. When people are talking about mental health or mental health illness, is now seems to be a thing. It's stuck in that discourse of individuals' personal experience. So, you know, I had advice being given to people who were attending the talks that, you know, you have to take personal responsibility for your own mental health, that you have to look after yourself. So there's that kind of individualizing way of thinking about mental health, and we know that flies in the face of what we know about mental health. But the most certain thing that we know, which is it's caused by social factors and often socio-economic factors. But I won't keep going on about that, because I do go on about that. But you kind of do have to go on about it, because it's so seldom woven into the story. But there's something else going on at these events. You know, they're community events. It's people being together with other people. So we have cafes. You have a bit of theatre going on. You have group discussions going on, or bringing people together. You have the sharing of food. It's a community event, you know, it's not an individual event. If this was, mental health was all about individuals, then we could perfectly well do this stuff via the internet or leafleting or something that didn't involve people gathering together in large groups. So maybe there's something else going on there. And maybe that's part of what you do when you organise a social event. You know, it's a social event, so let's make it social. So let's do the things we do that we associate with being social. You know, it's not being named, but it's there. That our mental health is dependent upon others. That we're interconnected with others. And our well-being is a social thing. It's not an individual state of mind. It's a thing about our relationships with people around us, whether that be family or friends or work colleagues, or more broadly, even with strangers. The sense that we feel we belong, or the sense that we feel valued by others, the sense that we feel respected by others. You know, the messaging that people need to listen to is not in the leaflets. It's not in the presentations, it's not in the talks, it's not in the advice that's being given, because this is advice that's largely coming from professional groups, largely informed by a psychological perspective, a mainstream psychological perspective. You know, kind of almost got to stop listening to that stuff and actually listen to the other stuff that's there but not being spoken. So in one sense it was a wonderful event, a social space, a gathering. The problem with it is it's the professional knowledge that's saturating these events. It's the psychologizing that's been woven into the very fabric of how people understand mental health. And it's been re-articulated and re-narrated by a whole host of people, by service users, by NGOs. Okay, let's sign off now and go and try and fix my camera for the next time. Can't believe I'm carrying this around like a complete dork. Next time I'll be a professional filmmaker. Just you watch me. Anyway, till next time. Ta-da.